Hello, Love Bay family. Welcome to Mental Health Hour. I'm Dr. Tapo over here in Ontario, Canada. I hope you've been well. In Canada, the winter is well into its icy self. We've had temperatures -2, 0, so it hasn't been too bad. But sometimes when there's wind, it's -2, but it feels like -15. So we're freezing over here. And I know some of you are listening from sunny shores and beautiful tropical places. Please send us some sunshine. It's good to be back. I know we've taken a bit of a break since we were talking about stress, anxiety, depression, and then we talked about seasonal affective disorder, both due to cold weather or hot weather. And as I promised, today we'll start talking about addictions, all manners and types of addictions. We're talking about that today. Where I feel like this is a really important topic, especially going into the holiday season, because a lot of people feel really low, feel isolated. This is a difficult time for a lot of people, and that's when you are most likely to engage in some of these self destructive, risky, dangerous types of behaviors. So, we're starting a series on addictions, and today we're just going to start on just the basics, some definitions, some basic understanding, maybe look at some statistics here in Canada, and you can look up wherever you are in the world what's been going on. I know I've been hearing a lot about more and more youth in Africa getting into drugs, getting into addictive behaviors and some risky behaviors because of the poor economic situations in some of our African countries. So if you're in any of those countries, please stay tuned, get in touch, let us know what's happening in your part of the world. And before I go any further, just a reminder that this mental health hour is for educational and information only. We do not replace a qualified physician, therapist, psychologist, psychiatrist, addictions counselor, or addiction specialist. I am not replacing that. What I am doing is giving you some information, increasing your awareness on some of these issues so that you can be more proactive and intentional about your health, your mental health, the mental health of your loved ones, and get the help that you need. So, this is for education, awareness, information only. So, like I said, today we're talking about addictions. You can text or email if you have questions, if you want to join in the conversation. I always love hearing from you, regardless where you are in the world. I like to hear from you. What are you thinking? What are your questions? And I want to just start by looking at some statistics and numbers. And here I'm just highlighting for Canada. So our number is 437-778-3299, 437-778-3299. And you can email infolovebay@gmail.com, infolovebay@gmail.com, call, text, email 437-778-3299. And I know some of you have asked about if I take clients myself. I do. And maybe next week or so, I'll share how you can contact me if you're looking for a therapist. There are some rules, like you have to be in Canada, you have to be in certain parts of Canada, because my registration, it is what is called a protected act, which means, and this is important for you to know, that anyone calling themselves a therapist or a counselor, especially in Ontario, they have to be registered with the appropriate college or regulatory body. It is a regulated act. So, addictions. And like I said, the holiday season is difficult. It really is a hard time. Today on LinkedIn, I can't remember what I was doing on LinkedIn. Somebody had written a post reminding people, if you're out in at parties, gatherings, whatever, and somebody is not drinking, this person was reminding you, stop asking people why they are not drinking. People have their reasons, some of them very personal, some of them related to personal health and other situations, but we tend to want to stigmatize people who are not drinking, who are not doing drugs, like you, that's the only way you can enjoy the holiday season. Please, if you're around people who will turn down the wine and the alcohol, leave them alone. It's none of your business why they are not drinking. Everybody has a choice and a right to make that choice. So the holiday seasons are hard. They're really, really difficult for a lot of people. We're talking also in terms of, like, we were talking about seasonal affective disorder. So if somebody is at risk for addiction, just the season alone, and by season, I mean winter, because they feel low, they might end up using certain substances and stuff like that. But remember, we're not just talking about drug addiction or alcohol related addictions. I'm talking about all types of addictions, including shopping. This is a very dangerous time of the year for some people who really cannot stop themselves from spending money that they don't have. And we might think of them as simply careless, but shopping addiction is actually a very real thing. And you'll see as we're talking about addiction, what exactly is addiction? One of the definitions is compulsive behaviors that people cannot control. We want, when we say to people stop doing that, that they immediately stop, but there's some behaviors that people cannot stop, and that is a basic definition of addiction. So it could be shopping, it could be drinking, it could be using drugs, it could be your Xbox, it could be social media as well, right? It's that compulsive behavior that a person can no longer control. They can't simply decide, oh, you know what, today I'm not going to be on TikTok or Facebook or Instagram, whatever. They can't. They just can't. And so you see that there are some addictions that we tend to think like, oh, it's harmless. Who cares if somebody is spending 12 hours on social media? The point is they can no longer control it. It is now controlling them. It is now driving their day. So imagine you have a social media addiction. You can't simply turn off your phone and focus on your work at home, on your work, right? Whether you're at home or in the office. And so, because you can't stop spending so much time, you're less and less productive in ways that you should actually be productive. Instead of doing your work, your homework, studying, whatever, you're on social media. That's addiction. You can no longer control the behavior. As a therapist, I've had lots of clients who'll say things like, oh, I'm only a social drinker, or I only smoke marijuana, like just because if I want to stop, I can stop anytime. And the truth is, they can't. They actually cannot stop. I've known people who will keep secret bottles of alcohol around the house, pretending that they're not drinking. People having car accidents and hiding the car because it will come out that once more they were drinking and driving. People losing their driver's license, and they need that driver's license for work. That is what shows that this has now gone beyond a bad habit. It is now an addiction. It is actively destroying their lives, their relationships, their abilities to work, to be productive. That's addiction. And so, as the holiday seasons are coming into focus, there's one house when I'm going home, I feel like those people went into the store and bought the entire section of decorations. They have lights, they have Santa and 12 reindeers, they have gingerbread houses, and all of these. The whole thing is like, honestly, it's the holiday season, and for some people seeing all those things can trigger something, and you find they start drinking a lot more, they start using certain substances a lot more. Like I said, they start shopping. There are people that go into major debt because of shopping, and in their closets they have things that have tags on them. They forget that they even own them. If you have in your closet, I'll say more than 5 things that still have the tag on them, and you've had those things for a year or more, really question if this is compulsive shopping, right? So we're going to be talking about addictions, sexual addiction as well. And the holidays are a dangerous time, especially for people who are feeling lonely. You get on those apps, you're meeting strange people, you're engaging in unprotected sex in strange places, and you just cannot stop yourself. That is what is called a compulsive behavior. And that is one of the symptoms of addiction. So, like we talked about seasonal affective disorder these last few weeks, and we know that seasonal affective disorder can lead to feelings of depression, of isolation, of anxiety, and stuff like that. So people tend to end up indulging, and even using the word indulging is inappropriate. People end up engaging in these destructive behaviors, social pressures, like I said. And then this is also the time of the year, whether we're talking holiday season or for us on this side of the hemisphere where it's winter, it's cold. This is when most people are likely to relapse. If they've been working hard, maybe they stopped engaging in some of these compulsive behaviors through the summer, they were doing well, and then the winter hits. They're more likely at this time of the year to relapse, to start using again. If it's drugs or alcohol, if it's certain behaviors, they're more likely to start engaging in that during this season, because it's the holiday season, but also on this side of the world because of the weather. Stress. I remember last year when we were going towards the holiday season, and people were writing in, and some people were saying, you know what, I hate this season. I don't look forward to going to see my family because people are competing who bought the best presents, who's been more successful, comparing each other's cars, comparing each other's kids, who's coming out on top. And so people feel a lot of stress and a lot of pressure to appear a certain way. I worked with a couple in the past. They were a married couple, and one of their issues was every holiday season, and here I'm talking about Christmas holiday season, they would find themselves buying things that they cannot afford. And we're not talking little things like appliances, because people are coming to the house for the holidays. They'll go and buy a refrigerator that they can't afford. They will upgrade this. They will buy a new flat screen TV. They will spend so much money that they did not have, because they could not bear the idea of people coming into their home and thinking they are not successful, they are not doing well, comparing their TV to the next person. And they realize that if they carry on like that, one of their main things that they were genuinely worried about was retirement. They had no savings. Because it wasn't also just the holidays, right? It's not just around Christmas. Sometimes your family is coming for somebody's birthday. Sometimes they're coming because it's Easter, because it's here in Canada in February, we have Family Day. So different holidays and occasions, but every time people were coming, they were spending ridiculous amounts of money that they did not have. Now, you might think, but that's not an addiction, it's just, carelessness or whatever. Remember, those compulsive behaviors you cannot control. And in cases like this, it was one person driving it mostly and the other just kind of going along with it. And you might find that in relationships as well, right? You are in a relationship. I know another couple that's in therapy, and he likes to party. And when I say party, we're talking the hard drugs, cocaine, and all of that. And they've been together since they were teenagers, and she loves him to bits. So, do you know what she does? She parties hard with him. She will be there right along with him. And the thing is, now they're expecting a child, and he can't stop. He cannot stop. And she has, because now her focus is on, I have a baby, I have a responsibility. So it might not be that she had the addiction, but he definitely did. And she was just joining them because that was the only way she could see of sustaining their relationship. As they grow older, she's maturing. Now she's thinking, I'm going to be a mother. I need to put this baby first. And now they're in therapy and he can't stop. But this is something they were doing continuously together for a number of years. So, my point in this is sometimes you have certain friends and they're not at risk like you are. For them, they can stop. Yeah, you're always together at the bar. You go together every Friday. You go do this together. You go shopping together. It's like going shopping. Your friend has a $1 million limit on their credit card. You have $1,000 limit on yours, and you go shopping together. You're going to spend your $1,000 very quickly, and your friend hasn't even started on theirs. Sometimes it's like that with addiction. You're more vulnerable. And as we're talking about this, you'll see that the thing with addiction is some people are at higher risk because of their genetics. You can actually inherit addiction. That's why you'll find families upon families upon families tending to kind of fall prey to the same type of addictions. Or if somebody, maybe your parents were addicted to alcohol, couldn't stop, and they drank so much, and you think like, okay, I'm going to be fine, I'm not doing, but then you start with the marijuana or whatever, and before you know it, you are addicted. So it doesn't necessarily have to be the exact same behavior. It's the fact that that compulsion can be inherited. It can be inherited. You might have a friend, and another type of addiction is gambling. You might have a friend, like you go to the casino together. You're thinking, okay, I'm only going to spend $200. I've looked at my budget. That's how much I can spend. And you will go when your $200 is done. You say to your friend, yeah, I'm done. I'm out. Your friend who probably didn't even have that $200 will sit there and spend $2,000, $20,000 that they actually do not have. So you can see the thing with addiction is you can't simply tell someone stop and they will stop. It is now beyond that. They cannot stop, whether it's gambling, sex, drugs or alcohol, shopping, gadgets. And by gadgets, I mean your phone, your Xbox, even television as well. There's some people who will sit there hour after hour, just they can't stop watching TV. They've lost the ability to control a certain behavior. And as we keep going into this subject, into this topic, like I said earlier, there are some where it might seem low risk, but the reason why people who, for example, get addicted to prescription medication, that's the thing that caught them, will tell you that I don't drink, I don't do this, I don't do that, I don't do that. It might have been that they're what is normally called drug of choice was prescription medications. But because that addiction pattern is possible with other things, they're wise enough to know that I can cut out prescription medications, but I also need to cut out alcohol. I also need to cut out these other things because it's all risky. Because it's all risky. So it doesn't just end with that one thing. Okay. So call or text your questions, your comments, 437-778-3299, 437-778-3299, or email infolovebay@gmail.com. Today we're just kind of wading slowly into the topic of addiction. Let's look at some numbers, okay? And I researched addiction numbers in Canada specifically, and then in some of the provinces of Canada. So in 2021, sorry, so in 2021, almost 4,000 people died from alcohol-induced deaths. So it could be alcohol poisoning, it could be that their liver, their kidney, whatever. But almost 4,000 people in 2021 died from alcohol-induced deaths, which was an 18% increase from 2019. And maybe this had something to do with COVID, that people were at higher risk because of everything that was happening around COVID. And so more and more people were drinking more and more. So an 18% increase, where almost 4,000 people in 2021 died from alcohol poisoning or alcohol induced deaths. Now I'm trying to see if this is specifically in Ontario or all of Canada. Okay, so that was the numbers that they had in Canada. And it might seem like a low number, but these are the ones that we would say are directly alcohol-induced deaths. But we also know that that and we talked about alcoholism, alcohol dependence, and all the kind of stuff that can happen because of that in the past. So we know that alcohol dependence can also lead to other things. So while it might seem like only 4,000 or so people, but actually it is a big number, and there's probably way more. And here's the thing. These were people under the age of 65. These are people under the age of 65. From January 2016 and March 2024, in Canada, 47,000 people died from opioid overdose. So this is a certain type of drug, and 47,000 people died between January 2016 and March 2024. In the first quarter of 2024, just this year, 84% of these deaths happened in BC, in Alberta, and in Ontario. So just three provinces. Approximately 60,000 deaths per year in Canada. 67,000 deaths per year in Canada are attributed to substance use, including tobacco. So smoking cigarettes is also considered an addiction because you cannot stop. You can't just decide, okay, I'm not. And some people do. I've had people say, you know what, I decided on this date, this is my last one, and I threw it away and I haven't touched it since, and it's been 28 years. Some people do, but a lot of people don't. 67,000 people per year are dying from, this is just substance abuse, which includes alcohol, drugs, tobacco, prescription medications. So these are huge numbers. And that's just substance. And this is the 67,000 might include people who were drinking and driving and had car accidents. That is also one of the major ways that people unfortunately die due to an addiction, driving under the influence of drugs or alcohol, and it can end in fatal accidents. In Ontario, from July 2017 to June 2024, 3.2% of those 47,000 that I talked about, 3.2% were Black people in Ontario. And most of them, the median age was about 36 years old. So these are young people, and 80.6% were male. So Black men, compared to Black women, more Black men died from substance use. And this is mostly opioid-related stuff. 72% between January 2016 and March 2024 due to drug toxicity deaths were males. So a lot of young men across the board, not just Black men, just across the board, a lot of young men are dying from substance disorders, from addictions and substance disorders. So these are some really big numbers that we need to pay attention to. Okay, so send your questions, send your comments. What do you want to know? So one thing you need to understand is, from a medical perspective, addiction is a chronic disease. Addiction is a chronic disease. And what that means is it's not something that goes away. Like, you don't pop a pill and then you get better. It doesn't go away. It is a chronic disease. It's a chronic brain disorder that affects the brain's reward, motivation, and memory systems, leading to compulsive substance use or behaviors despite the harmful consequences. So you know how dangerous it is. Your spouse tells you, if you don't stop, I'm leaving. You see their bags are packed, and at the door, the children have been at grandma's for the last 2 weeks. And you'll still, as much as you love your wife and your children, you will still go and do that one thing that will blow your family apart. You just can't stop yourself anymore. That moment of feeling that tension of wanting that alcohol or those drugs, or if it's gambling, the tension of I'm going to win, I'm going to win. You will give up so many things just for that moment, things that you've been investing in for years. And when people ask you, don't you care? You genuinely and honest to God care, but you cannot stop yourself. And this is something we need to know as families, as communities, as spouses and partners. You need to know they cannot stop themselves. They need help. They need intervention. They need professional help. It's not that they don't care. It's not that they don't love you. They feel the guilt. They feel the shame, all of it, but they cannot stop. They will go into hundreds and thousands of dollars in debt, but they can't stop gambling. They will lose even the roof over their heads, but they can't stop gambling. You have gone to counseling so many times, you've left, and they've done this and they've done that, and you're giving them the last and final chance. And this time they know if they mess up again, you will never come back, and they will still go and sleep with a random stranger because they cannot stop themselves. Sexual addiction is real. Having said that, I know a lot of people use it dishonestly when they get caught. But it is real. It is a very real chronic disease. Sexual addiction is a very real chronic disease. So does everyone who goes around cheating and just doing it with anyone, does that mean they're addicted? Not necessarily. Some people just don't care. Like, genuinely, I'm being honest. But a lot of people also have that chronic brain disorder that leads to risky sexual behavior. And that's often how you can tell if this is an addiction or they just, saw an opportunity and jumped for it. With sexual addiction, and we'll talk about it some more in the coming weeks, they seek it out and they will go to the great lengths for that release. Like something that you'd be like, but if you really wanted sex, you have a wife in your bed. Like, that doesn't make sense. You drove 300 miles to go sleep with a random stranger behind a gas station. Why? If you see how they are trying um to just get that momentary reward, they will go to the craziest extents. Like, you just don't, like, you look at them and think like, were you bewitched? Like, what is this? And people often with sexual addictions, it's not just one person. That guy who's been sleeping with the same girl for 3 years, he's not sexually addicted. He's just a cheater. And he probably prefers her over you. Please kick him out of your life and keep moving on. But with people with sexual addiction, it's not even about who they're sleeping with. It's just the fact that they need this release. So almost anyone and anything will do. So they will often have multiple, random, all types of sexual partners. And often those liaisons, I'll say, don't last long. Somebody who's been sleeping with the same mistress for 15 years, it's not sexual addiction. They go there every Friday at 8 p.m. It's not sexual addiction. People with sexual addiction, he can be in a board meeting and will find an excuse to leave that board meeting because somebody liked them on the app and they are now going to meet a random stranger during a board meeting to go and have sex. Do you see the difference with sexual addiction, like real sexual addiction? It doesn't make sense. It's not regulated. It's not structured. It's not, I'll see you every Friday at 8 p.m. It's not like it's random. They will go to any lengths. It's usually a bunch of very different people here, there, also very chaotic behavior. That's how you know that this person has sexual addiction. But we know that some people, when they get caught, will tell you, I'm a sex addict, I need help. And that's just playing on your sympathy and lying to you. And then you find out 3 months later they went back to the same woman. That is not sexual addiction. Okay. So addiction is a chronic brain disorder and it's about reward. All they want is that feeling, whether it's through drugs, alcohol, sex, shopping, gambling, whatever. That's all they want, they can think about. As much as they love you and their kids and their parents and all of this, those things don't give them the reward that they're seeking. So they will literally tear their lives apart, not willingly, but it will happen. And that's why you find when people do get help and manage to get clean and to change some of these behaviors, it's a lot of hard work. It's hard work. And there's always that risk. There's always that risk that they will start again. And if you have someone in your life, support them. If you cannot, walk away without judgment and without hurting them as much as you can. Create that space that will allow them. Sometimes you need to let them hit rock bottom, whatever that might be. The sad part is we've heard the numbers, 67,000 per year. And these are not people who didn't have loving families, or maybe you might think they were uneducated or they were unhoused or homeless, or it's not like that. Addiction touches all manners of people, all manners of people. That's why you find like some of these even preachers in church, they can pray for you and you are healed instantly, but the guy is struggling with sex addiction. And next thing you find out, oh, you are sleeping with 20 different prostitutes and doing this and that and doing this and that. And there are 10 women on the side. And those are usually the indicators like, okay, this is a chronic brain disorder issue. But that guy had the same mistress, they meet the same time every day for, no, he's just cheating on you. Move on with your life. You can do better. Okay. So another indicator that this is addiction is what we call the initiation outside of consciousness. And this is what I mean by they can't help themselves. It's not like they're sitting down thinking, okay, so tomorrow at 3 o'clock, I'm going to cheat on my spouse, or tomorrow, it doesn't work like that. It's not planned out. It's not conscious. All they know is I need this thing right now, and I'm going to do whatever it takes for that momentary. And that's the thing. It doesn't last. It doesn't last. And so they're constantly chasing it until they can do nothing else with their lives. If you're seeing that they're still going to a job, they're still paying their bills, they're still maintaining a mortgage, they haven't got there, and it gets worse and worse and worse until they can't maintain a job. And now they're losing their home and the car is gone and this and that. And you see their lives over time deteriorating, falling apart. Nobody chooses, like they've worked hard, they went to college, university, or they built their business, put everything they could into this thing, and now it's falling to ruin. And it looks like all they care about is alcohol or drugs or this or that. It's not conscious. It is not something they're aware that this is what I'm doing and I'm tearing my life apart. It has gone beyond that. So they cannot control it. And so when they seek help, one of the first things they're trying to learn is, how do I control this? And it's not easy. So first we start by putting things that protect them. There are some people that are referred to as sober companions. So when a person first starts their addictions journey and they know, if you leave me by myself, within 2 hours, I'm right back where I was before. So sober companions will actually move in with you, live with you 24/7. Like you're under prison guard to protect you from those behaviors. So they are with you. Oh, you need to go there. They come with you. It's time for bed. They sleep in the same room, or down the hall, anywhere where if they even hear a little sound from your door, they're there to stop you from leaving the house. If somebody rings the doorbell, because people are clever these days, oh, okay, I'll stay home, but Uber Eats comes and in the pizza box is something else. These are real things that happen. And I've had clients who will go to the most, you'd be like, why are you not a government spy? How are you able to sneak so much alcohol into a house where everyone is watching you? They will find a way. So when they first start seeking help, one of the first things that an addictions counselor or specialist will do is put protective structures around that person. What can help this person stay safe if the danger is alcohol or drugs or whatever it is? You put some protective things, because just because they've sought the help, I've come for addictions counseling, doesn't mean immediately I know how to control things or I know how to stop. I've known people who are in addictions counseling for 12 months, 13, 15, 16 months. And the entire time they were using. But eventually they might get to a place where they can control it. And sometimes they will get there and then they will relapse and start the journey all over again. And it might take time. It might take time. And the hope is, especially where substances are involved, the hope is they live long enough. They live long enough. Earlier this year, I got a call from a friend of mine, and she doesn't live in Ontario. And so she was calling saying, listen, I'm coming from her own friends, and her friends, it's a physician and his wife, they're immigrants, doing well, but they came with their child who is now an adult, and this child disappeared. And then she died from a drug overdose in the hospital. And the thing is, sometimes it gets to a point where even if you're in the hospital, there's nothing that they can do. And she was young, and her parents didn't know, and for a long time, they didn't know where she was. And then when she finally said, I'm ready to seek help, and so she was there in the hospital with people that were helping her, trying to help her get clean and regain her life. And she died. and they didn't know what to do. What do you do? A lot of young people, and these were immigrants from Africa, came here for a better life. And I've heard parents talk about that. Like sometimes I wonder if it was even worth it to come to this country, because now look at my child. And maybe back home because we had a bigger community, because that's what happens here. And I'm not blaming parents at all. Not at all. That's the life here. And it's sad when I hear that we're seeing more and more youth addicted to drugs and alcohol and engaging in these risky behaviors in Africa, where they do have extended family and communities. We know in Africa, we always laugh about it. In Africa, if your neighbor sees you misbehaving, they'll smack you, take you home, tell your parents, will smack you as well. And then when your grandparents come and visit, they hear the same. So every relative will get their turn to smack you for your bad behavior. But we don't have that on this side of the world. And so sometimes parents end up regretting coming here because they didn't have that, and they start thinking like, maybe if we had stayed, our child would not have got into this behavior or that behavior. Maybe they wouldn't be indulging in this and that. But the unfortunate thing is, we're seeing this all across the globe. Young people more and more vulnerable to dangerous drugs, and they are dying. They are dying. If the median age is 36 years old, that's a lot of young people, a lot of young people who have lost their lives. And this was not a conscious choice. And the thing is, you might say, well, that first time that they made a choice, that's true. It's true. Maybe the first time, maybe the 100th time. But at the point when we're now saying this is a chronic condition, they're no longer making that choice. It's not a choice anymore. They cannot control it anymore. So genetic factors play a role. So if you know that your father was addicted to something, just take his story as a cautionary tale and stay away from any potentially addictive behaviors, and be very, very attentive to what drives you to do certain things. You have to be very attentive, very attentive. Okay, I've been going out every Friday and I'm drinking a lot, and the last couple of months, and you know what? My dad was addicted or my mom was addicted. I better stop. Stop as soon as possible. If you know there's been addiction in your family, stop. Prescription drugs have really taken a lot of people because you're not expecting it. You get hurt. Maybe you had a car accident, you fell at work, whatever it is, you have excruciating back pain, leg pain, whatever it is, you go to the doctor, they prescribe certain medication, the oxys, the Percocets, and all of that. And before you know it, you are addicted to prescription drugs. And it's not that you were out there in the street looking for them. No, you genuinely had an injury, but here you are now. Get help as soon as possible. If you find you're still, maybe the pain isn't as bad anymore, but you still want to be popping those pills, go and get help right away. Right away, go and get help. If you now find you are thinking about, oh, I only have 2 left, I need to go back to the doctor so they can give me more, and you know you're not even taking it for pain anymore, you need help. Get the help that you need. And that addiction kind of sneaks up on people, right? It sneaks up. The first time you go to the casino, it's all fun and games, and you won $300. Before you know it, you're back every night, and you lost $1,000, but you told yourself, "I'll come back and I'll win it again." And before long, I remember I once lived for a little while in Reno, Nevada. And Nevada, lots and lots of casinos. Oh my goodness, casinos everywhere. I remember one time going out for dinner, and it was in a hotel. And to get to the restaurant, you had to walk through a casino. And this place, like, there were people who looked like they had been sitting there for 5 days. I mean, the dead look in their eyes. They look like they haven't eaten, they haven't even had a drop of water in hours. They're just there. And the casinos are deliberately designed so you don't leave. They have waiters who are coming, so you don't leave the table, you don't leave the machine. These people are coming, they're giving you everything you need. And a lot of casinos, you can even smoke indoors, so you won't stand up and go outside. You'll smoke 20 cigarettes. They're all about to go. Someone will come and sell you a new pack. And people live like this day to day until they have nothing. And even when they have nothing, they're still there at the casino playing. They're borrowing money here and there. So if you know that there's been some kind of addiction in your family, pay attention to your own behaviors. Am I still controlling my drinking? And sometimes we lie to ourselves, right? As human beings, we're good at lying to ourselves. You tell yourself, yeah, I'm fine. I'm fine. Are you though? The only way you can be absolutely sure you're fine is actually stop and see if you can. Some people don't even realize how far gone they are until it's too late. You keep telling yourself, oh, it's just a bit of fun. Oh, I'm just drinking because we're out with the friends. And then tomorrow there's another reason. And tomorrow there's another reason. And then you're spending hundreds of dollars on drink you can't afford. I once had a client who, when I asked her, "Do you drink?" She was like, "Oh, just the odd, like just some wine to help me unwind after work." I'm like, "Okay." And I said, "And how much wine?" Um, Maybe a bottle or two. Do you know how much a bottle or two every night to unwind after work? Not a glass or two, a bottle or two. And the thing is, and maybe this is me, but I notice this a lot in TV and movies and stuff, where you have someone who's sitting there and they're like, "Oh, I was chilling at home," and there are three empty bottles that they drank by themselves in one evening, one sitting. That is not healthy. That is not healthy. It should be a warning bell. One of the things I tell my clients is don't drink alone. At least if you had four friends and you drank those three bottles together, that's less for you. But people will sit there and then when you ask them in therapy, they'll say, "No, I'm a social drinker," or just a little bit to unwind. Three full bottles of wine is not a little bit to unwind. It is not. So we tend to minimize, to lie to ourselves. Oh, I just lost just a couple of hundred, which you did not have. Yes, it sounds like it's nothing if you lost $200 or you spent $200. I once knew someone, and this wasn't a therapy client, who was honestly spending hundreds a month on lottery tickets. They would not just buy one, they would buy the whole thing. and go home, sit down, scratch, 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 scratch. Next day, go back, buy the whole thing, scratch, scratch, scratch. How much did you win? $20. And they'll take that $20, add 50 to it, go and buy some more. And then when I asked, so actually, how much are you spending on lotto per month? And it turned out they were spending more than their salary. How? How does that happen? So they're borrowing money here to cover that bill, and they're borrowing here to cover that bill, and their credit cards are maxed out, and because it takes a while, right? It takes a while. And now you're taking from your savings to cover that bill because it's not enough anymore, and you're taking from this, and now the savings are gone, the credit cards are maxed out, you're in debt, you're starting, and it seems so harmless to play lotto. And for a lot of people, it is. But for some, it's not because they cannot stop when enough is enough. And that's addiction. That's addiction. So, over the next weeks, like I said, we'll talk some more about addiction. We'll delve deeper into the different types and how it happens. We'll look at some of those genetic factors a little more deeply. Look at, like, even thinking in terms of relapsing and recovery, and what are some of the things you can do to help yourself, or maybe it's a loved one, right? And I recall, I think some time ago, maybe it was in August or so, I talked about comorbidity, which is when you have two or more mental health issues. So, one individual suffering from two or more mental health issues. And we find that with addiction, remember, it's a chronic disease, it is definitely a brain disorder, so it's a mental health disorder. People with addiction disorders often tend to have others as well, because some of it comes through that. I worked some years ago with two brothers. I think they were Polish, two Polish brothers, adult men, who both had ADHD as children, and got into trouble a lot at school, and so much chaos, and the dad was abusive, so every time they got into trouble, he would beat them, he'll do this, he'll do that. These kids started self-medicating before they were 13 years old. They were already drinking heavily because nobody got them the help that they needed, and they were always being beat up. They knew something was wrong, so they started to self medicate. And self medicating is when people use substances like marijuana, drugs, alcohol to try and treat themselves because something's wrong. So by the time they were 18, both of these boys were heavily addicted to alcohol. And it wasn't long before they were using other drugs. And by the time I saw them, they were in their mid 30s. One was 36, the other was 38. They started at the age of 12. They had been homeless so many times. They would join a recovery thing, go through the steps, do whatever it takes, get to a point where they now have housing, life is going a little bit better, and then they would relapse. And what was often the trigger for the relapse is the company they kept. So at one point, these two brothers realized if we're going to survive, we need to separate. So they made sure they were not living together anymore. And for a while, for the younger brother, that worked for a while. But what is sad is he found other friends who eventually pulled him into it. And it's kind of sad because you're thinking, so does that mean this guy should not have any friends, any family to make it to survive? That's hard. So, comorbidity happens quite a lot with addictions disorders, depression, anxiety as well, bipolar, um, PTSD as well. These are some of the more common ones, but there's so many others. And I just talked as well about seasonal affective disorder, which is a disorder. And a lot of people with seasonal affective disorder are at risk for an addictions disorder as well. So this happens quite a bit, that they have some kind of mental health disorder that makes them at risk of addiction or vice versa. Okay. So this is our introduction into addictions. I hope you'll send your questions and your comments. We'll start delving a little deeper into specific types of addiction, gambling, sexual, alcohol, substance, shopping, addiction to technology, all of that. We'll start getting a little deeper into it, even some of the rarely spoken about types of addiction. So please send your questions and your comments 437-778-3299, 437-778-3299, or email infolovebay@gmail.com. It has been a pleasure spending this time with you. I hope that you will stick around over the next few weeks, and I hope you're getting excited like I am. I do love Christmas. I love the holiday season. I just don't like the winter, so it's a bit of a mixed feeling situation going on here. Take care of yourselves. Have a wonderful rest of the week. Happy December. Have a wonderful rest of 2024. Good night.